Well, 2 weeks ago, we hear the Lord Jesus, he was predicting the destruction of the Temple of Jerusalem. So he is at the Mount of Olives, and he's contemplating the temple. And then he tells his disciples, the ones who are with him, that the Holy Temple of Jerusalem is going to be destroyed. And actually happened in the year 17, the temple was destroyed. The language that he was using 2 weeks ago was an apocalyptic language. So that's the language of hope, to see what is awaiting for those who remain faithful to God. That's the image of the apocalyptic language. The good things that will await for those who remain faithful to the Lord. So he talks about the sun and the moon getting darkened, and then the stars falling from the sky, and earthquakes and things like that, that sometimes for us when we read that, we get scared. But Jesus, basically, when he uses the language, he's talking about those who have the power in this life, like the kings in Jesus' time, the Pharaoh. They were like the stars, they were put on the sky. And Jesus was predicting that all human power will fall. So that's the prediction of Jesus. The skies and everything that is on high will fall, because the sky is the place for God alone. So only God can be on the sky. Sometimes we also may put some things on the sky. Sometimes we put money on the sky, because it's the number one priority. Sometimes to us, material things, many other things, the idols that we have. So all the idols will fall down. That's what Jesus is telling us. So that's the apocalyptic language that he's saying. And if we read the prophet Daniel on chapter 7, he talks about different animals getting up from the sea. So he's talking about a lion and a bear, leopard. So these animals that are emerging from the sea represents the chaos, the evil in the world. And those are the kingdoms that were before Jesus' time, some of these kingdoms that we know about. So the prophet Daniel is talking about the Babylonian Empire that is represented by a lion. Later on is going to be overcome by the Medos, represented by a bear. And then later on is going to be overcome, the Medos will be overcome by the Persians, a leopard also, that is going to be conquered later on by the greatest beast that we can describe, Alexander the Great. So all these empires, the prophet Daniel is telling us, is going to come to an end. And then there will be a human, the Son of Man. He talks about the one who is in a form like a human, the Son of Man who is to come, and he will be the king of the universe. So all the evil, all the beasts from the past will be overcome. And the only one that will be prevail for all ages is the Son of Man, the one who has a human heart, the one who is moved with compassion, with pity, the one who loves his people. So that's Jesus, the Son of Man, the one who was to come, who is to reign for all ages. So the old world is going to pass. The world of violence, hatred will pass, and the kingdom of Jesus will come. It's a kingdom of peace and joy. And that's what we are to build. That's the kingdom that we are to build by doing what is good, by doing what the Lord asks of us. And that's why we hear in the gospel today, in the gospel we hear that Jesus is warning his people, and he says that what happened in the time of Noah is what is happening today. People get married, they eat and drink. These are no bad things. I mean, in the time of Noah, there were no bad things that were happening. They were married, getting married, eating, drinking. These are basic needs. And the same thing is happening today. These are some of the needs that we have. But there are two approaches. One that belongs to the old world, and one that belongs to the new kingdom of Jesus. For example, we eat and drink, but I think the question is, do we share what we have received with those who are in greater need? And if we share what we have, then we belong to the kingdom of Jesus. But if all what we care is just to eat and drink and not to care about the others, then that means that we still belong into the old world of violence, of hatred, of where nobody cares for one another. The invitation is that we choose rightly to share what we have. There is another approach, that we're getting married in Jesus' time. There are two ways to approach sexuality as well. One is when you're concerned just about yourself. And then the other one is when you care for the other person and you want to make the other person happy. When you respect the dignity of the other person and you look for what is good for the other person. That's another approach. So the one that belongs to Jesus is when you care for the other and you see it with dignity and respect. That's the right approach. And that's what Jesus is telling us. In Noah's time, there were many signs. He was building the ark. People didn't believe. And that's why many were lost. Only a few were saved. Because they were not able to read the signs. The signs were there, so evident, but they didn't believe. And that's what Jesus is warning us. And he said, the signs are here today as well. And we are to act wisely by doing the will of God, the work of God. And then he gave us that example of the people, the professional people. There is a man working on the field. The woman is grinding the grain and then making bread. So these are professions. They're in the very ordinary of their lives. And I think the question is, how do we live our profession, the work that we do? Do we still in the old world, or are we in the kingdom of Jesus, doing good to others? So how do we do in the very ordinary, in the work that we are to do? Do we do it right? When John the Baptist received some of the tax collectors, he didn't tell them that they had to leave their profession. But he told them that they needed to do things right. With the money that they were making, they were to help other people and to be just and fair to people. So he didn't ask them to leave their profession, but to do things right. And then some of the soldiers came to John the Baptist and they asked, what should we do? And then he told them and said, well, just do not abuse people. Do not exploit people. But you just do your work right. Do what is right. Do it with fairness and justice to the people. That's what you are to do. You don't have to quit being a soldier, but just do your work right. And that's what we hear in the gospel, these people who are working on the field or the women who are working at home, to do things right. Another example that might help us is there was in this building, there was the doorkeeper. He was working, and then he sees an older lady coming to the door. He was reading the newspaper, and then he noticed that there is a lady at the door. So he goes and helps the lady to go upstairs. And then he takes her to the elevator, and then he sees that the lady is kind of sad, so he makes a joke and made the lady laugh. And then very kindly, he helped her to go where she was going. There was another doorkeeper who sees the same lady, but he's too busy. He's looking the news on the newspaper, and he's wondering what's happening. Why his favorite football team lost, and he's so interested into that. And then he sees the lady, and he says, "Well, just come in." And then he points to the elevator. There is the elevator. I'm too busy. These are two approaches. One was very kind, and he was bringing the face of Jesus to this lady. The other one seems like he didn't care at all. I think that's what we have to ponder. How do we treat other people? What face do we bring to other people as we welcome them? There is another example. There was a man who was working in a restaurant in Europe, a very well-known tourist place. And then he sees, he's working with tourists all the time. And then he thinks, well, I have some leftovers, If I use the leftovers to feed these people, they don't even know. I will use the leftovers, and then I will make money. And that's what he does. So I think the question is he doing what Jesus asked him? In other words, we are to give the best that we have to bring the face of Jesus to other people. That's what Jesus is talking about in the gospel today. What is the approach that we have with people as we work for them? Or in our families, what is the face that we bring to our families? How do we treat them? Do we treat them with respect, with dignity? What is the face that we bring to them? Is the face of God? Is the new world, or are we still in the old world of violence or hatred? What is the approach that we have with other people? And then Jesus continues in the gospel, and he says that we are to be awake. And to be awake means that we are to discern. And to discern means that I need to look at Jesus and say, am I doing his work? Am I being like Jesus, like he is? Or am I acting like a human? Or am I dehumanizing myself? How do I act with other people? I think that's the discernment that we have to make. And to be awake means that we try to be like Jesus, to be like him. And that's the face that we are to bring to other people. So we ask the Lord to help us to always discern what is right, and that we may always bring his face to those who are close to us, the ones that we encounter in our families, the ones that we encounter at work, and that we may do the best that we can, so we can always bring the goodness of Jesus to others, so they can have that experience of love and have that encounter with Christ as well, and be changed and be transformed. Amen.